we on? All right. All right. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It is May 20th, 2021. Please call the roll.
Mr. O'Brien,
Here.
Mrs. Wagner-Fiesel,
Here.
and Dr. Weiss.
Here. The meeting records will state we have 2 members absent. Can you please stand to say the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Let's see. I need approval of tonight's agenda. Do I have a motion? You guys are going to have to take turns.
No amendments?
No, nothing is amended.
Okay, so I make a motion, we approve as written.
Second. Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Dr. Weiss,
Yes.
and Mrs. Wagner-Fiesel.
Yes. Tonight we have one presentation, and Dr. Jacobetti is going to come up in a minute and give us an update on the curriculum. But before he does so, I'm going to read something. I'll take this off so everybody can hear me. The mission of the Olentangy schools is to facilitate maximum learning for every student. That is what we expect of ourselves and what our community expects of us. Our district is committed to graduating students who are purposeful, resilient, curious, and kind. We want our graduates to have unlimited opportunities for their future. Our work begins with students as young as 3 and as old as 22. Every one of our students deserves a school environment where they feel accepted and capable of realizing their full potential. Our students deserve to learn how to think critically and should never be told what to think. For 5 years, the district's strategic plan has declared our commitment to creating a culture of inclusive excellence. By that, we mean that every student and every staff member have a sense of belonging within our schools. It is part of our strategic plan because it is a tall order. There are nearly 24,000 students and adults in our schools every day. Not one of them is the same, but they all deserve fair treatment and a positive experience. Sometimes these individuals can be unkind to one another. So working toward culture of inclusive excellence means taking purposeful action to reduce incivility and increase belonging. There is ongoing concern among some members of our community demanding the removal of critical race theory. That is a term I had never heard before this school year, and it is something I have been learning about. I am afraid that many parents are confusing Olentangy with schools in New York or California and conflating what they are hearing in the media with what is really happening in Olentangy. In the same way that I reject the claim that our district is systematically racist, I also reject the claim that our district has adopted the critical race theory. Let me be clear. There have been instances where staff members have made students feel alienated through sharing of personal political views, and that is wrong. I accept that we can always do better. But anyone claiming that critical race theory has come into our district in every facet of our organization, including our curriculum, is also wrong. Olentangy does not teach students to hate themselves or to hate their country. Olentangy rejects the idea that anyone should be judged by their race. Every student should have strong character and a strong, positive self-image. Students should never be identified as oppressors or oppressed. Olentangy does not teach students to embrace Marxism or anti-capitalism. We are not preparing our students to overthrow our Constitution or advocate for white abolition. These claims have been repeated so often that there are some in our community who believe it is true. Olentangy will never be a district that values one race over another or that teaches students what to think rather than how to think. We encourage those who have experienced or have children who have experienced specific instances of concern in the classroom to talk to their child's teacher or principal. We remain steadfast in our efforts toward our mission to facilitate maximum learning for every student. And together with civil discourse and open communication, we will be successful. In closing, let's all live by the golden rule and do unto others as we would have those do unto us. Dr. Fetty?
Thank you, Mrs. Feasel. I also want to acknowledge Mrs. McMurray here, our curriculum director as well, in case you have any specific questions about curriculum development. She will be prepared to answer those. So the purpose of tonight's presentation is to walk you through the process of curriculum development and what curriculum is and what it's not in the district. According to the dictionary, curriculum is the courses offered by an educational institution. It's also known as the course of study in the dictionary. According to our board policy, curriculum is defined as courses of study, subjects, classes, and organized activities provided by the school. The plan for learning necessary to accomplish the educational goals of the district. These are big definitions, and curriculum means a lot of things. It's a very large word that means a lot of different things, as our definitions explain. When I talk about curriculum, I've been working in school administration and curriculum for like 13 years now, maybe 14. But I like to talk in terms of written curriculum, taught curriculum, and assessed curriculum. And then we'll talk about curriculum resources. So I'm going to walk you through each of those here in this presentation. We also, in the district, have always embraced the Olentangy foundations. This is one of the things we do when we hire new teachers, is we walk them through the foundations and explaining the importance of a solid curriculum, good assessment practices, effective instruction, and being responsive to the context of the classroom. And the perfect balance of those four things is how we define maximizing student learning, when the teacher is meeting all of the needs of all the kids in the classroom. This is also a graphic that helps us understand where local curriculum fits within state content standards or state curriculum. There are the Ohio Learning Standards, which are adopted by the State Board of Education, and then you, as the local board, have adopted those. Then our curriculum department creates what we call curriculum blueprints, curriculum maps, that help teachers to understand what is meant by each of the standards and how across the district teachers are expected to implement those standards in terms of learning goals and common understandings. And then at the top of the pyramid there is our assessment system, which with the Ohio state tests, as well as our performance descriptors that we've created for our elementary grades and our teacher created assessments. So I'm going to walk you through each of those. So starting with the written curriculum. According to our policy, it's the job of the superintendent to recommend to you, the board, the courses of study that should be deemed in the best interest of the students. They should align with the district's mission, address the needs of the students, and be guided by the state's academic content standards. Our policy says that each course of study is intended to provide a basic framework for instruction and learning. So the board's job, simply put, is to approve of the basic framework. And then the curriculum department's job is to help teachers implement that framework in daily instruction and meet the goals that the board has set for the district. So when I say written curriculum, I'm talking about our courses of study, which is, more often than not is state standards. There are some national standards and industry standards for certain courses. The state puts out model curricula which are very detailed, like unit plans, basically. You do not adopt those, but they're available to all of our teachers, and they are used by our curriculum department in creating our local tools. And then we create our curriculum maps and our blueprints, and those tools contain a lot of different components. So this large slide is a picture of a curriculum blueprint. I believe this is 7th grade English language arts. But you'll see that all of our blueprints start with a long-term transfer goal of what the students should be able to do after learning the content. Then we have the cornerstone tasks, which are demonstrations of student learning. There are big ideas for every course and essential questions and enduring understandings, which is a curriculum design process that's been established for years as a way to break standards down and understand what does that mean and how should we apply those. These also include our academic content vocabulary, which is an important part of curricula that's identified. You've also recently seen our portrait of a learner. I would argue that this is a part of our written curricula as well, that we want our students to be purposeful, resilient, curious, and kind, and what we mean by each of those things. So our curriculum department not only creates these documents, but then also develops professional development for staff around these and how they can incorporate each of these into their classroom, because each classroom is different. A kindergarten classroom is obviously different than an AP English classroom. It's different than a specialized learning center. So we want these things to apply in every one of those settings. And that's the job of the teacher. These are our literacy framework and our math framework. This is more model curriculum that we've created, or more curriculum documents that we've created. Again, there are reading standards, but like our reading framework helps our teachers to understand how to implement those standards. For example, if Mrs. Patrick was here, she would certainly mention something about phonics when she sees this, because she's aware of this document. And the standards could be, in my opinion, misconstrued, whereas a teacher would teach phonics as a standalone unit once in the year, and they would address phonics for maybe 3 weeks and never again. We adopt a balanced literacy approach, that we want to touch on all of those pillars of literacy throughout the year. So we take the standards, the written curriculum or the approved curriculum, and we help our teachers to understand how they're supposed to implement that. And then our school principals are the instructional leaders of their buildings, and their job is to ensure that teachers are following the expectations. Here's also another tool we create. This is called our sequences. So it's the order of instruction for certain standards. We have these for the elementary school. Here's a grade 4 second semester. So what is written on there is mostly content standards from the state's academic content standards that we've adopted, and when those standards should be introduced, and then also some resources that can be useful to the teachers in delivering the instruction. So all of our written curriculum is intended to frame what our goal is, what the learning goal is for the students, and what they should be able to do after the course. The teacher's job then really steps up when it comes time to teach the curriculum. So we have the written curriculum on paper. The taught curriculum is how it's enacted, how a teacher decides to deliver each lesson. It needs to be aligned to standards. Teachers create instructional units that are comprised of daily lessons. And then daily lessons include a number of learning activities. These are things as a parent you will see as projects or assignments, discussions, presentations, research, homework. These are all learning activities designed by the teacher to help the students achieve the standard. It's important that the teacher is involved in this process, because the teacher's job is to know the students and know the students' needs. There are districts, not many, but some districts follow what I've always called a set curriculum, also known as a scripted curriculum, that tells you on a daily basis as a teacher what you should teach. And every classroom in that building, and every classroom in that district should be teaching the same thing on the same day. In my opinion, and in a lot of professional educators' opinions, that's not best for students, because it makes it very difficult to meet the needs of students who might be struggling, as well as students who have accelerated beyond what that daily goal is. Teachers need to differentiate their instruction to meet all the needs of all the students to keep them all engaged and on a path towards mastery of learning. So we do not have scripted curriculum, but we certainly have a lot of written curriculum, as you've seen, for the teachers to utilize in designing their daily instruction. Also, when it comes to taught curriculum, there's a couple policies I wanted to point out to the board. One is your policy on multicultural and inclusive education. The board designates multicultural education because they want to see harmony within our community, stability of success of our nation. It says our school curriculum, instructional materials, and professional development should reflect an inclusive perspective. The goal of an inclusive perspective is to help students understand themselves and others, and appreciate and value similarities and differences in all people. The policy goes on to say that the board declares that it rejects all forms of discrimination in schools. Also, that staff should receive professional development to help them to foster understanding, acceptance, and positive relations among people of different backgrounds. So again, this is a board policy that's adopted. We also have a policy on controversial issues. This policy is important because it acknowledges that there is a place for controversial issues in school, that there is a time and a place where they are appropriate, just like there's a time and a place where they're not appropriate. But for the purpose of this policy, it says a controversial issue is any topic that is likely to arouse both support and opposition in the community. And when that happens, if the teacher is going to be teaching something that is going to arouse support and opposition in the community, they need to proactively communicate with their principal to make sure that their plan for approaching that content is a solid plan. And they should also communicate with the parents of their class to let them know that this is our intent, this is why we're teaching this. And if a parent has an objection to that, we always accommodate alternate requests, alternate texts, leaving the classroom for a certain period of time, whatever it might be. Our policy encourages open-mindedness, and we believe that controversial issues can be pursued in a spirit of scholarly inquiry, not indoctrination. So then after the taught curriculum, I'd like to talk about the assessed curriculum, which is how do we know how we're doing? Just like the written curriculum and the taught curriculum, the assessed curriculum is also aligned to our standards. And there's two types of assessment that we talk about, formative and summative. Formative assessments are often teacher designed, and they inform the ongoing instruction of the teacher. It's a spot check to see how the kids are doing. Yeah, we might think of it as a pop quiz to see how effective has the instruction been so far. What else do I need to do to bring all of my students up to where I want them to be? Summative assessments are the tests you give at the end of a unit, or Ohio's state tests or AP exams. They could be in the form of multiple choice tests, portfolios. We really value open-ended tests whenever possible, written open-ended, so students have the ability to fully express their knowledge and apply their knowledge and show us exactly how much they've learned and what they know. But this is another important piece of overall curriculum. And then the curriculum resources. So we have basically two tiers of curriculum resources. We have our district level curriculum resources, which are board adopted. They're the primary resources for the class. That means they're the first book or the first digital program that the teacher refers to when needing a resource for a class. They could be textbooks or anthologies. They could be elementary reading programs, math programs. And then we have supplemental resources. They may or may not be purchased by the district. We've purchased some supplemental material district-wide. Schools sometimes purchase their own individual supplemental material. Teachers oftentimes go to the public library. And if you remember back to when we were all allowed to go to the library, there's usually a person there who's got one of those milk crates on wheels. That's a teacher checking out specific books that are going to be purposeful for an upcoming lesson. Those are what we would call supplementary materials. They're going to borrow them, take them to school, use them with the students, and then return them. So there is teacher discretion within supplemental resources. And our board policy states that our staff should continually research new sources and types of supplementary materials and explore their innovative use. It is not against our policy for a teacher to use a resource that they find and determine is appropriate to meet their instructional goals for their students. That resource still needs to be appropriate for the classroom. It's still expected that it's aligned to the standards. Our teachers are qualified to make that determination. And if they make mistakes, we do hold them accountable. Here are some of the curriculum, district level curriculum resources that have come through the Board of Education for approval. There's obviously many more. Anything or most of what parents see in the My OLSD portal would qualify as this as well. So they're print resources as well as digital resources. And then in closing, all of the documents that I've sped through here are available on our curriculum website. My email address, Peggy's email address are there. Parents do call us and ask questions about our curriculum. We're always glad to talk about it. All of our blueprints are linked on our website. So it's a great place to start if you want to learn more about the district's curriculum. Do you have any questions for me?
Questions? Dr. Wise, did you have?
Oh, actually, I don't.
Okay. Kevin?
So I didn't see any reference to 1619 project or critical race theory.
Right, we do not teach either the 1619 project or critical race theory. Not only do we not teach it, we've never even evaluated it like as a consideration for instruction. They are newer, like Mrs. Fiesel's statement at the beginning of the meeting said, they're newer developments in media, but they're not something that we endorse or embrace. We do not promote any type of divisive anything. We really want, as you saw, our policies are about inclusion and creating a sense of belonging for our students and our staff. Thank you.
I have a couple questions,
Mhm.
of course. So when we hire new teachers that come in, you know, how do you train them about this curriculum? Because they've been, if they're new grads, you know, they don't have access to the Olentangy curriculum.
Sure.
So how and when do you do that?
So at the beginning, right before the beginning of every school year, we have a 3-day new teacher academy where all of our new teachers come and our Peggy and the curriculum department lead them through an onboarding process for them to understand what is expected of them. We start with the Olentangy foundations. We want them to understand our definitions of curriculum instruction and assessment and our expectation for those things. They get their curriculum blueprints for their course. I know Mark and I have talked about this before, that, you know, when he started teaching and when I started teaching, you know, typically you're handed a textbook, and pointed to your classroom and told to go get them. We spend 3 days with our teachers to make sure that they truly understand our expectations for them, their colleagues' expectations for them, and how to use the plethora of resources that we have available for them. Because all of those curriculum tools are helpful for teachers, and those are things that I would argue most districts don't provide their teachers. And my experience has been that the new teachers are always very receptive to the support we provide because they are craving it and they need to understand what their expectations are, and they're happy to know the supports that are available in the district.
Okay, so then how do you continue to educate those teachers that might have been here for a while in either changes or maybe they've switched class, you know, grade levels, or how do you keep up with that?
So there are multiple opportunities for that. We have, first of all, we have 3 professional development days built into the school year every year that our curriculum department designs. We have collaboration time for all of our teachers to work with their colleagues. So if you just changed content areas, you're still going to be collaborating with other teachers who are in that content area, and they may have, you know, years of experience that would benefit you. We also support cross-district collaboration. We bring teachers over here to central office for trainings before school, or excuse me, during school and after school and in the summer. One of the kind of foundational beliefs of our district is that professional collaboration drives continuous improvement. And all of our teachers are afforded the opportunity to collaborate with colleagues and give an exposure to the curriculum department. I should also mention the curriculum department does building visits. Is it 3 times a year? Four times a year to each building, where they go and meet with the teachers during their planning period in small groups to work through a set topic. So there's lots of opportunities for that.
Okay, then what if a parent, you know, and I'm thinking of English class, you know, what if a parent isn't comfortable with a student reading, you know, maybe an assigned book?
Sure. At the secondary schools, we have a literature review process. When a teacher is going to assign a class-wide book, they have to vet the book. They have to read it. They have to review multiple reviews of the book, and they have to identify alternative texts that would help to meet the learning goals or the standards that that book was chosen to address. So if you were, if your teacher is going to read this book and you're not comfortable with that book because there's some language or there is a graphic scene that you don't want your child exposed to, the teachers all are prepared to provide alternative texts to the parents to read something else that, or to the students to read something else that can still meet the goals of the classroom. And that applies even when it's not a controversial issue. So first of all the books we read are, you know, within the age band, appropriate age band for where we introduce them. But, you know, in order for books to be interesting sometimes, they include stuff that some parents find objectionable. So even if it's not a controversial issue, but there's a bad word used throughout the book, and they can tell the teacher, hey, we saw that this book has this and we'd rather read something else, and the teacher would be prepared to help them select a different book.
You know, just to piggyback on that is because, you know, obviously the bar of what is acceptable or not acceptable, and I'll always respect somebody's beliefs of what they find acceptable for their family, but I think there's also a level of acceptance that other families may have that are different. So it's okay for one child to read a book and another child to read a different book, because their family finds that, their parents find that acceptable for them. I mean, I hope, obviously, the purpose is that we've been getting a lot of questions about, you know, specifically critical race theory and the 1619 project and our talk, you know, our curriculum. I like what you said in your statement, Mrs. Fiesel, about sometimes our teachers do, there have been some mistakes that have been made that we've had to hold people accountable for, you know, maybe some materials that weren't appropriate or properly vetted and you know, but I really do think this shows the complexity of what our teachers and our principals work through to get the results we get and the work we do, the collab. I mean, we've created schedules, and you guys have actually, you know, you've supported our staffing levels that have the, if you remember, somebody used to call them free periods. Our teachers do the work they're doing during the day on collaboration and curriculum planning. You know, that all of that is very important work, and how they hold each other accountable. You know, that's a big piece of it, and we have that at every level, elementary, middle, and high school. We've built schedules with common planning time, so teachers have time to do this work together. They also do a lot of it outside, you know, outside of the school day and the school year. And again, I know that firsthand because I see it. But Jack's right. When he, 1989, I got thrown a math textbook and said, have at it, teach algebra. And I started in chapter 1 and worked my way through. No support. And we do provide a lot of support for our staff, and they do crave it. And it's what makes them better. And I think it really is the work that our curriculum team and our professional development team do with the and supporting the principals and the teachers is the reason we get the results we get.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to, as you were speaking, you know, my son last night was very excited because in his 4th grade classroom, he recently built a mechanical catapult with a motor attached to it. Today and tomorrow, he's building a boat out of empty milk jugs and some kind of a motor to drive through the water. This is in a 4th grade classroom. He's constructed this all by himself or with a partner. But this isn't coming from any of our district-approved fourth grade textbooks. This is something that that teacher has figured out a way to engage those students and created a meaningful unit that's aligned to state standards. And you know, when we look at our own children and their experiences in the classroom in the district, I find by and large that our parents are very pleased with how their kids are being taught on a daily basis and engaged. And I do feel like sometimes we get worried about things we hear and we forget to focus on what we're actually seeing. And, you know, so I think our teachers are doing great work. I'm proud of what our curriculum department does and how they support our teachers. And I think we have a very, very strong track record of success with that model.
Any other questions?
Probably not a question, more of a comment, but you know, I think it's important that we continue to support, you know, giving the teachers some latitude in their room on how to teach and how to instruct. If we go to script-based curriculum, you know, I think you sap all the energy and all the creativity out of the classroom, and you know, these are professional people that want what's best for their students, and I think if we try to box them into, you will say X, Y, and Z, I think that will take away a lot of what makes Olentangy very successful.
I agree. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
On to my board president's report. Well, on behalf of the school district and our school board, I want to sincerely thank all of our staff, students, and parents for all of their hard work this year. It has been an incredible year. I hope I never have to use the word unprecedented again in my entire life. I remember thinking last spring when the governor closed all the schools that we would be closed through spring break and then everything would get back to normal after that. And boy, was I wrong. Never in my or anyone else's wildest dreams did I ever imagine that we'd still be dealing with the pandemic throughout this school year. But you all did it. We did it. We made it through. There's no going back. We are only going forward. And speaking of going forward, as a board, we need to discuss our meetings going forward. Last spring, when most everything was shut down by statewide health orders, we still held school board meetings, but we did so virtually, as was allowed by Ohio law. Then, as health orders allowed, we started meeting in person, but with no visitors due to social distancing guidelines. I want to be clear, our meetings have never been closed. Closed meetings, except for those allowed under executive session, are not allowed under Ohio law. All of our board actions have to be taken in an open meeting in view of the public. With the health orders lifting, we need to discuss allowing more people to attend our meetings. So just like we went through virtual meetings when the health orders restricted us being together, the health orders are lifting on June 2nd. And at the June 10th meeting, we will not be restricted by those health orders, and we will not have to worry about social distancing or room limitations. So I would like to ask the board members that are here now if they have any questions or concerns going back to so-called normal for our meetings.
I do not have any concerns.
I mean, I don't. I think the timing, you know, for the June board meeting to be, you know, more in person, open to the public is very consistent with what we're seeing in the private sector in terms of what private employers are doing in terms of allowing people in buildings and folks to meet. And, you know, I mean, my personal experience, we're still limited to 4 people to a conference room, that kind of thing. But I think as more vaccines get out, I think we're better positioned to be able to get back to normal with our June meeting.
I know in my place of employment, we are still wearing masks and we're still social distancing, and you know, we're not using the cafeteria if we're bringing our lunch. But on June 2nd, those will change.
Mhm.
One thing I will miss is that the drive to downtown has been really nice when I'm driving downtown.
Traffic is
The
back,
traffic
yeah.
is gonna be coming back. So, June 10th, we will go back to, allowing visitors to come to our meetings. So then I also wanted to put out there for discussion an idea, we won't decide tonight because we have 2 board members that are absent. By the way, Mrs. Patrick, she's at, the Delaware Area Career Center School Board meeting, and, Dave had another engagement. We moved our meetings, usually we're the second and fourth, Thursdays, and we moved our meetings to, we're on the third, so kind of, did some, there were conflicts to scheduling in there. So, but I just want to throw this out there, think about it. Lakeisha actually had this idea, if it would be beneficial for school board members, if we kind of divided up the district. And so like Lakeisha would have Glen Oak, Shanahan, Heritage, or maybe Olentangy, and she would be like the representative or whatever, for those schools. And if somebody had a question, they could go to her, knowing that Lakeisha doesn't speak, for the entire board, but she could put them in the right direction. Like if someone had a question about curriculum, you could say, oh, Jack Betty is the person that you need to talk to. So that people kind of have an idea, instead of sending us all emails, maybe we could be the point of contact. Just an idea to throw out there and to think about. So, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
No, I just think that well, I guess I do, I'm talking.
Yeah.
I just think that, just kind of helps with that, community, building that community and being there.
Okay, so we will discuss that at our next meeting. And then finally, since our last school board meeting, Mrs. Hatfield and I have participated in virtual meetings on school funding. And actually Senator Brenner has joined us, along with representatives from other school districts. Senator Brenner did state on one of the many meetings we were in, and I can't even remember which one, Emily, he stated that there will be a school funding formula in the state budget. And the state budget has to be finalized by June 30th. However, we still don't know what that looks like. We know what the House's version looks like, but now the Senate has the budget and they might be making changes. Again, in the House's version of the budget, Olentangy would receive over $2,500 per pupil when their version would be fully phased in. That would equate to about $55 million, which ironically is what we should be receiving if the current formula was actually working. So the Senate is expected to release their version of the budget somewhere around June 1st, which doesn't allow a lot of time for debate because the budget has to be done by June 30th and they never agree with the House. And so we'll have to go into conference committee. So we will stay tuned and see what what comes out of the Senate on or around June 1st. And that is my report. All right, Mr. Rafe, what do you have for us tonight?
Okay, before Mr.
yeah.
starts, while I appreciate Mr. Brenner's efforts, there's been a formula in every budget that's ever been passed.
True.
We just don't like it. It doesn't help us, right?
Right.
So I wish he would have said, I'd advocate for a formula that's more equitable and fair to districts like Olentangy than just saying, yeah, there'll be a formula in the budget, because there's always been a formula in the budget.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. And I have not heard him say, yes, there will be a formula in the budget that will be more fair to Olentangy. Have you heard that, Ms.
No, I have not.
Okay.
And quite honestly, he usually defers it to Senator Blessing as the individual who's working on it. So there's just not a lot of information coming from the Senate at this time to really have an understanding of what their bill might look like.
Good question. So what will happen come June 30th? There's no budget.
But then what they have done in the past is they keep the current budget going, but the current budget isn't good for Olentangy either. Or they will pass like I can't even think what it's called, like a temporary budget, because if they don't pass anything, the state doesn't have money that it can spend. So sometimes they'll just roll over the budget, but they'll pass a temporary budget. And that's what happened 2 years ago. They actually passed a temporary budget, just to make sure that, the state employees could be paid and the state could continue to operate. But, yeah, it's a big headache. But thank you for asking. Mr. Rafe.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Very good stuff so far. So I'm going to start, as I always do, with our Living the Mission slides. And last week, May 3rd to or a few weeks ago, I guess now, it just seems to go so fast. May 3rd to May 7th was Staff Appreciation Week. So we got some pictures of CDL staff who was getting celebrated, and transportation, and some of our buildings. So again, I just want to reiterate, just like you did, Mrs. Fiesel, congratulations to all of our staff for all of their effort all throughout the district. It's just been amazing that I think of what we've been able to accomplish with all the hard work of all of our people. So it was great to celebrate Staff Appreciation Week. I want to highlight 3 Liberty High School students, Carter Beck, Luke Melnick, and Ethan Sipos, who are really accomplished gymnastics, and they're competing, and this is it's kind of an out-of-school activity. They're not competing on our own individual teams at this time, but they all received very, very high recognition at the Region 5 Championship recently. So congratulations to those Liberty High School student athletes. So just want to celebrate, as we are trying to do as much normal year-end activities as possible. So obviously they're not completely normal because we still have limitations and with guests and things like that, but our elementaries are planning their field days and their 5th grade clap outs and all the different activities that they normally do, and try to get as much fun activity in the year ends. Typically, a lot of buildings do, there was a birds, owls, falcons, and hawks at Freedom Trail and Oak Creek this week. So there's just a lot of fun activity going on here as we wind down the last week of the school year. Mrs. Janegi had a great time with her new staff. Got to tour the building the other day with Robertson Construction. So there you see the Shale Meadows team. She's done hiring for the most part. I think we just added another section there, but all in all, done hiring, doing a great job, and she is in the process of building that team. So there's just a lot of energy and enthusiasm about Shale Meadows. I had the opportunity to attend 2 of these ceremonies at Berlin and Orange High School. We have 21 students who have committed to serving our country in the military. So we do a great job honoring them with the Military Signing Day. And obviously that's something near and dear to my heart, and just very proud of those students for making that commitment. Starting to get a lot of questions about 21-22 already. People want to know what we're going to do. And so, obviously the mask mandate and health orders will be lifted on June 2nd. I texted Governor DeWine about 5 o'clock this evening and asked him if I had the authority to remove the mask mandate, and he responded, no. So I still think it is prudent that we continue to follow that order until June 2nd, at which time it will be removed. So we're going to continue to follow all of those policies through the end of our school year. Once June 2nd comes and we're done, get everybody out of here, we will start to discuss with the health district what things look like, and we will communicate information. We have 3 board meetings, June 10th, June 24th, and July 8th. My little angels on my shoulders back here. July 8th, that I'll be giving updates, and then obviously, so my hope would be that things are as normal as possible, and that there'll be options for people that want to have options, and we're going to do everything we possibly can to keep everybody as safe as possible given their comfort levels. But right now we want to see how things are going to go. obviously, if there's no orders in place and we're not ordered to do anything, then we'll proceed accordingly. So five school days left though, so let's just get those 5 days in and we'll start planning for next year. I'm gonna be advocating for as normal as possible though. So we are coming to the close of our branding project. So the high school brand committees will be sharing their new imagery with their school communities coming up. We've got big reveals planned beginning May. They'll begin sharing their new mascots and logos beginning May 24th, and the big reveals will be Wednesday, May 26th. So we're very excited to bring that project to a close. Got a lot of action items on this agenda. You see there the renewal of administrative contracts that are expiring, renewal of all the teacher contracts that are expiring. We have 2 administrators on the agenda. Dr. Branson was previously on an ESC CO contract, and there's no financial benefit to having them on that contract anymore. So we actually pay with the ESC service charge more than what we would be paying if we employ Dr. Branson on our contract. And then Leanna Ford is a new pupil services supervisor who's coming to us from Upper Arlington. So we have on there the non-routine use of a school bus, as we always donate the use of a school bus to for Paul's Memorial Day Parade. So very happy to participate in that. You see quite a few items regarding Shale Meadows, the emergency responder radio system, which is that kind of radio system that automatically notifies the authorities in an emergency. The media center materials, the ELA curriculum. So those are all on as action items. Our first guaranteed maximum price amendment for middle school 6 in the amount of $6 million. Jeffrey, Mr. Gordon, what does that entail?
That is for the site work and the steel for the project, since the steel has a longer lead time.
Very good.
We get started on both.
Thank you. This one, the new theater lighting, Liberty High School and Orange High School theaters the lighting in them have been a problem basically from day one. And if you sometimes you guys come to event ceremonies there, the house lighting is really bad. So the lights are very difficult to replace. They're just hard to control. So this is one of those ones where we've gotten complaints about this particular issue for quite a while, and I'm really happy we're finally getting it addressed. So you see there, and finally the approval of interactive devices for our classroom displays. So we're going through the process of now upgrading smart boards and other projectors. So kind of that's again that new technology that we had put in at Berlin High School. So we're starting to bring the other buildings back to date as all part of our technology plan. So then you see here our important dates. Tomorrow we have the Senior Sunset Salute events. So thankfully the weather is looking good for those, a little warm, but looking good. So we will be able to hold those outdoors with our guests, our students and their guests. You see there the Berlin commencement walk and virtual graduation ceremony. So Berlin's commencement walk begins at 9, and then the virtual graduation ceremony will be released at 2 o'clock. And of course, we will be live streaming those events while they're actually happening. And then you see Liberty is in the afternoon with the commencement walk at 2, and then the availability for the virtual graduation ceremony at 6, and then you see Olentangy and Orange's time. So Mr. O'Brien, if you want to borrow my pickup truck and load a bunch of people in the back, you're more than welcome to use it for Maddie's graduation.
Thank you.
I'll have it clean for you and ready to go. Just let me know.
Still our plans.
Last day of school is May 27th. As, we are doing the groundbreaking for middle school 6 on May 27th as well. And then report cards are available on June 4th. Next meeting's the 10th. So, questions? All right, very good. Thank you very much.
Yep. Treasurer's report. Mrs. Hatfield, what do you have for us?
A few things to discuss. If I may, I'm going to add just a couple of keynotes from the state budget conversation. We didn't really discuss about the backpack funding. That is a type of funding that has been in the news regarding the House and what is that and what does that mean. It's another piece of legislation that has been released in terms of trying to help students gain ground and have additional supports. When we discussed that with Senator Brenner, he didn't feel that it would be a piece of legislation that would move forward. So it's not an item that they are looking to put in the Senate plan. As we have discussed at previous meetings, the Fair School Funding Plan does have supplementary components to the student funding model that it has created, but they're not labeled anything similar to backpack or things of that nature. We are putting together a press release. We worked with Miss Amanda Beeman in the communications department and put together some information along with Mrs. Fiesel to kind of have some talking points around the Fair School Funding Plan and why it's important to contact our senators and reach out as community members to help ask questions and get behind the funding model. So there is connectivity to the Fair School Funding Plan through the Treasurer's webpage. Please feel free to log in and ask questions along the way, read some more information, and if you would like to reach out to me and ask questions, I'm more than happy to take those. Turning then into the action items. We have more than we usually do on any given agenda, but it's a busy time of year. We have the April financials, amended appropriations, board meeting minutes. The appropriations and board meeting minutes are before the board for approval as recommended through Ohio Revised Code. Those are standard practices and procedures, making sure that the community has that information approved by the board and is available to them. Donations, we had several donations that we would like to recognize. We have Chromebook and notebook valued at over $2,000 donated to Glen Oak by Xin Yang. $10,000 for technology at Olentangy Meadows from Burlington. Miscellaneous items valued just over $900 to the Berlin High School theater program by Miss Laurie Webb. Over $1,000 for the cross coaching at Olentangy High School from the athletic boosters, and playground equipment totaled just over $4,000 to Johnny Cake from their PTO. So we're very grateful for all of those donations and all of the donations that we've seen in kind around the community. We've seen a lot of signs, as Mr. Rafe previously showed, with community support for the students and the activities that are going on at the year end. I'll give you a pause from that information before we go into the 5-year forecast, but it is on the agenda for your approval. Along with that comes the general fund budget, which shows the 5-year forecast expenditures broken down by object code to give the community and yourselves a better understanding of what's coming in those main component lines of the forecast. Just to reiterate, we are not receiving any additional funding for the pandemic. We have spent the initial rounds of the coronavirus relief funds and the ESSER funds and the Broadband Ohio funds that were distributed at the beginning of the year. Those have been depleted and used. We are spending current general funds to continue that support of those particular expenditures. We are not eligible for ESSER 2 or ESSER 3 relief funds. So there will be no additional supports coming to the district for that at this time. I have not heard as a legislative matter that there's any movement on taking what the state was given in those buckets or second round or third round of coronavirus relief funds to be distributed to school districts. At this point, I believe, quite frankly, it is what it is. So no additional funding in that area for Olentangy. Are there questions about the regular action items outside of the 5-year forecast?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll let you get back to your seat because I've got something else to read. Right. Next is public participation before Krista reads. Mrs. Hatfield, can you remind everyone what the policy is for public participation?
Absolutely. The policy, number 169, can be found on the Board of Education website. It is available for those listening in the community to read in totality. A couple of key points are that participants must be recognized by the presiding officer, which means that Mrs. Davis will recognize the name and address of each person submitting public participation for us via email. Each statement made by the participant shall be limited to 5 minutes duration unless extended, and the course of the meeting is limited to half an hour per the policy. Again, all statements shall be directed to the presiding officer, Mrs. Fiesel. No person may address or question board members individually. Name and address will be read into record.
Okay.
With that, Mrs. Davis.
All right, are you ready?
Yeah.
Ready to go? Okay, proceed.
Kara Randolph, 6529 Lilac Lane. I would just like to send support to the board, administration, and staff for their continued dedication to growth in the area of inclusive education. I appreciate the hard work that many administrators, teachers, and staff have put into creating safe and rich learning spaces for all children. I appreciate the work that individuals and schools are doing to educate themselves and take the bold and brave steps to be authentic and have tough conversations, as well as finding creative ways to innovate and construct lessons so that all children are represented, seen within literature and content area texts. I want you to know that your work is not unnoticed, and these best practices are working to help students feel supported, safe, and valued within our schools, which we know in turn creates an environment for maximum learning. Thank you, and please know that I, along with many others in our community, support all of your efforts. Norma Kanner, 5439 Grand Ridge Drive, Galena, Ohio. Resurfacing Walnut Creek Elementary front backdrop has not occurred since we moved here 18 years ago. Partial very front and back has been done. When will that be finished in total? Next, Virginia Yoder, 2177 Ben Brush Place. Dear Olentangy School Board, I'm writing in support of the diversity, equity, and inclusion work that has taken place over the past few years. The Dear OLSD letters last summer were a wake-up call that there were issues in our schools that needed to be addressed. I was so glad to see Olentangy take action in response with the work of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion team. The One Community programming has been outstanding, especially the most recent one featuring the voices of students from our schools. Addressing diversity, equity, and inclusion in schools has been shown to reduce bullying, have positive effects on learning and test scores, improve classroom management, and create a positive school community. These issues are being discussed at colleges as well as in the workplace to create a culture of respect for one another. Continuing this work in our schools prepares students academically and socially for life after they graduate. Keep up the great work. Lisa Heinz, 3457 McCammon Chase Drive, Lewis Center. Dear Olentangy School Board members, I am the proud parent of an OOHS graduate, Olentangy community member of 16 years, and an educator. In OLSD, my son experienced some of the best education available. Diagnosed with autism, ADHD, and identified as gifted prior to 3rd grade, there were plenty of obstacles to his school success. Educators, administrators, and staff were willing to accept my son just as he was and worked hard to propel him forward with a sense of accomplishment, worth, and pride. Bullying by peers was dealt with professionally with compassion, just-in-time teaching, dignity, and a belief that he would thrive as long as he was in their classes. Academic expectations and supports were tailored to his cognitive and social emotional needs. He had the benefit of an individualized education plan, IEP, a legal document which mandated many of the supports he received. As a volunteer throughout his schooling, I also witnessed his peers receiving just as much attention, consideration, and goal-driven curriculum as he was afforded. In my experience, the OLSD teachers and staff went above and beyond in countless ways to accommodate the individual needs of all their students, regardless of ethnicity, ability, gender identification, religion, financial status, or mandate. All students benefited from this positive, inclusive approach. This is the hallmark of quality teachers providing quality education. This reflects, in part, what is meant by inclusion, a sense of belonging and worth for all students. This is the education that all of our students need and deserve. I'm aware of parents in OLSD who are concerned that critical race theory, which is beyond the scope of a K-12 classroom and has been refuted by our diversity, equity, and inclusion director, is being taught. They want teachers to, quote, only teach academics and leave the, quote, soft skills to them. Somehow, inclusive teaching has become one of those, quote, soft skills. Teaching is a job laden with values-driven, teachable moments. I believe that most teachers, community members, and parents can agree that we want our children to learn important soft or non-academic skills such as right from wrong, kindness, empathy, and compassion, integrity, communication and listening, respect, responsibility, and perseverance, critical thinking, and other qualities not found in textbooks. As a parent and teacher, I realize that these types of skills require values and are not taught in isolation. They are taught in real-life moments when the lesson is brief, clear, relevant, and immediate. Teachable moments pop up dozens of times every school day and cannot be made a homework assignment to be learned out of context at a later time. Limiting teachers to academics only devalues educators and denies all students the rich, whole child education they deserve, and we all want for them. Teachable moments are time and situation sensitive. I thank you for facilitating growth by enabling teachers and students to learn about and discuss the many ways in which our differences can be embraced and combined with our strengths to make us all better citizens of a broader world. I'm sure we can agree that there is more work to be done in DE&I in our schools and community so that all of OLSD can be proud of the diversity accepted within and outside our rather sheltered area. That challenging work is modeled by you and facilitated by your support of administrators and teachers. Please secure a more inclusive future for our increasingly diverse district by communicating the value of learning important life skills when it matters most. The board would do well to model this by changing the Braves name to fully reflect its commitment to DE&I, which you have so clearly supported thus far. This is your teachable moment. Use it to make clear and tangible the integrity, inclusion, and quality this district values. There is a large community here supporting real history and real life skills taught in our district. Next, Kara Stefanko, 4575 Cascade Drive, Powell, Ohio. I want to talk for just a moment about truth and honesty. I think we can all agree that these are two fundamental qualities and that without them, we sow seeds of distrust. Without them, we have no bedrock on which to build anything. How will a community ever come together and educate children without these two principles? Certainly, we desire for our children to be honest and have integrity. Even our student handbook outlines consequences for dishonest behavior or the supplying of false information. However, lies and dishonesty is exactly what this community is getting from this board, our superintendent, and our chief academic officer. We have been told on multiple occasions that critical race theory is not being taught in our schools, but that in a nutshell is a lie. Though you may call it by other names, the tenets are present. When you use multiple professional development days to train teachers with teachings from Hassan Kwame Jeffries, include books for student instruction by Robin D'Angelo and Ibram Kendi, and push social activism into the academics of our classrooms, we are not hoodwinked. One need only to read those texts or listen to those presentations to know that the foundations of CRT are already in our classrooms. Saying that you're not teaching CRT or avoiding direct answers to that question is simply dishonest. Addressing racism in our community and classrooms can certainly be done. No one's suggesting that we don't, but using the foundations of CRT-based models is not the answer. These models are based on racism themselves and ask our students to divide themselves into groups based on race or gender or sexual preference, thereby only perpetuating racism. Our students are not a collective, they are individuals with individual needs. I'm going to assume you already know that in light of the mission statement at Olentangy to provide maximum learning for every student, unless of course you're being dishonest about your desire to live out that mission. Like anything in this life, you get more of what you focus on. If all we focus on is race, we will get racism. Our focus should be on providing equality of opportunity for all students. Providing equality of opportunity necessarily involves treating all people, regardless of race, gender, religion, or sexual preference, in ways that support and encourage their individuality and natural gifts and talents. CRT merely focuses on race and does not provide any solution. CRT promotes the idea that we must have equality of outcome. Thus, it will never be satisfied and will only water down academics until the very people it claims to want to liberate are imprisoned by their inability to compete academically. No one wants to deny that we have a history of slavery and racism in our country. If we're honest about our history, it has affected people of many different nationalities: Black, Irish, Italian, Chinese, Japanese, Native Americans. There are horrible periods in our past where ethnic groups were treated unfairly, all based on group identity. So let's not repeat it again. CRT promulgates group identities over which we have no control. It makes that group identity the focus: race, religion, gender, etc. How can that be anything but divisive? This is not a good or logical solution. It takes away the notion of merit, self-determination, and responsibility. We need to learn from our past and move forward. To remain stuck in the past, repeating our previous mistakes, is an error we cannot afford. There should be penalties and punishment for true acts of racism, but not everything is racism. Commenting on strange smells of unfamiliar food or being fascinated or curious about hair that doesn't look like your own is not racism. It's a lack of knowledge, maybe even ignorance. But ignorance should not be punished. It should be educated. So let's educate in a truthful and honest manner that supports the integrity of all of our students. That one looks like it cut off. It's out of the, it superseded the field, so the full one will be available for you. Amanda Clark, 3215 Marcliffe Drive, Lewis Center, Ohio. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. I have been a nurse for 18 years and nurse practitioner for almost 15 of those years. My experience and medical knowledge has been beneficial in understanding the manipulation that is occurring with regards to COVID, mask mandates, and the gene modification experimental drug they are calling vaccine. I would be happy to meet with all of you to discuss the details of the below statements, but due to time limitations, I will try to be brief. I stand here today to be the voice for our children, the same children that you were elected to protect. Our children are being forced to carry the burden of decisions based on emotion, not truth. Let me begin with stating that in the beginning of this so-called pandemic, I too was fearful. At that time, none of us understood how this virus would impact our lives. I had to make the difficult choice of continuing to work in the career I loved while possibly placing my family at risk. I would come home from a mentally and physically exhausting shift, change out of my clothes, throw them in the washer, and run upstairs without touching or kissing my family to shower. I lost countless hours of sleep wondering if my career was important enough to place my family in harm's way. That fear motivated me to do my own research. Today, I stand before you as an educated mother that not only understands the hard truths, but one that is not going to sit back quietly and allow bureaucrats to make unlawful decisions that are harmful to our children. I don't want to hear, quote, "we are listening to the experts," because if you think Dr. Fauci, the CDC, or most of those making these ludicrous recommendations are being truthful, then I encourage you to take the time to educate yourselves. We did not vote for the elected officials of the CDC. We voted for you. We elected you to make these difficult decisions for our children. Our children are suffering in the hands of people we trusted to care for them. If it's education you, your faculty, or the students need, then I come here today to offer that education. If you turn off the MSM and listen to the hundreds of experts that are brave enough to come forward with scientific facts, it would be impossible for you to justify masking our children. 1, neither cloth nor surgical masks have any detectable effect against transmission of viral infections. If you listen to industrial hygienists and PPE experts, they will undeniably prove masks do not protect you against the coronavirus. Not only do they not protect you, they can actually cause multiple diseases. It only takes seconds to minutes for your body to become oxygen deprived, creating an acidic environment. Bacteria, viruses, and cancer cells love an acidic environment. Dentists are seeing horrible oral bacterial infections in our children. We are requiring our child to wear a mask that will undoubtedly increase their risk for infections in mouths that are still losing teeth, growing teeth, and many have braces. Did you know that Fauci wrote a paper in 2008 stating that more people died from a secondary bacterial pneumonia than the virus that was responsible for the 1918 Spanish flu? He concluded that masks were likely the cause of this pneumonia. His story changes to fit his agenda, not science. 2, the so-called pandemic has been inflated by statistics and promoted by fear. As if that isn't horrible enough, we have a propaganda machine lying to the public about the safety of this, quote, vaccine. None of these mandates can be justified based on science. From testing asymptomatic people to misuse of the PCR tests, statistics have been and continue to be falsely elevated. Even the definition of pandemic was changed to justify calling this a pandemic. If we were really in a pandemic, why are we not stepping over hundreds of dead homeless people that often have a lifestyle that certainly doesn't promote healthy immune systems? Why are the Amish seeming, and it cuts off there. All right. Next, Lara Kretler, 5585 Ketch Street, Lewis Center, Ohio. To the leaders and board of Olentangy Schools, I want to thank you with all my heart for the time and effort that have been put into diversity, equity, and inclusion at our schools this year. Nothing is more important to our family than living in a school district where differences are celebrated and children can feel safe, supported, and truly flourish. Diversity, equity, and inclusion have always been very important to me. I'm a member of the local community group's Parent Diversity Network and Women for Embetterment. We want continual improvements in diversity, equity, and inclusion at Olentangy schools so that children from all races, nationalities, sexual orientations, genders, ability levels, and walks of life can feel safe, supported, and able to thrive. I also write the lewiscentermom.com blog and have been both a strong supporter and a harsh critic of OLSD. I still feel strongly that OLSD must change the OHS mascot and team name to something that does not offend and disrespect the Native American community. But that's not the purpose of this letter. The purpose of this letter is to thank the OLSD Diversity and Inclusion team and the Alum Creek Elementary team for all that they have done this year to make school a safer and more supportive place for my child. You see, during this school year, my 5th grader came out as non-binary and gay. This was on top of an already stressful and unprecedented year for everyone due to COVID. You can imagine our feelings as parents having to navigate an entirely new reality, on top of already living in a new world due to COVID. It was a lot. The actions of Olentangy's D&I team, as well as the Alum Creek principal, counselor, and teacher we interact with every day and who are copied above, made all the difference. Our child knows that if they face difficulties or discrimination during a school day, they always have a safe place with trusted adults like Mrs. Worth and Mrs. Walker, who have their back. In addition, as parents, hearing the voices of student leaders like Parker, who spoke about being transgender during the One Community Conference, gave us hope and strength. Seeing the district's commitment to making incremental steps forward to be more equitable, diverse, and inclusive meant the world to our family. I realize there are voices in our community that oppose diversity, equity, and inclusion. I can't personally fathom how anyone could be against these positive values, but I understand and recognize there is a vocal minority who come from a place of fear, intolerance, hatred, and refusal to change. I am sorry for the difficult position this puts you all in every day. I want to thank everyone copied on this email for standing up to fear and intolerance in our community. I implore you to continue efforts to move toward equity, inclusion, and celebration of differences. Now that I have a child who is part of a marginalized group, I feel even more strongly that we're in the right school district. Our family will continue to do everything we can to make Olentangy a place where our child can feel safe, supported, and truly flourish. Thanks for your time in reading this and for all of your work to further and fight the good fight. If I can be of any help to any of you as leaders of Olentangy schools, please let me know. Next, David Ruggieri, 5583 Jeffries Court, Westerville, Ohio. As the father of 2 high school students, I'm writing to express concern about the curriculum changes in district classrooms that were never shared with parents. I send my teens to school to learn academics, but this year the district's equity and inclusion team and some educators are placing greater emphasis on divisive social justice issues than academic content. Quote, culturally responsive teaching, quote, critical race theory, or quote, equity and inclusion, no matter what you call it, is an injection of radical politics into our students' lives. Here are examples. Some 10th grade teachers are using the book Stamped by Ibram X. Kendi, a writer who stated that white people who adopt children of other races are using their children as props so that they can be perceived as white saviors, all the while stripping the kids from their culture. As the dad of 2 adopted Guatemalan children, I find this comment insensitive, racist, and offensive. I object to teachers claiming this author is a social justice expert when he's actually a profit-driven activist who bashes capitalism and emphasizes that skin color defines identity. One of the district's equity and inclusion team members posted a passage critical of Abraham Lincoln from this book on social media with the hashtag truth. This is a direct endorsement of Kendi. I'm teaching my son and daughter that merit matters and that they are more than the color of their skin. Should educators be allowed to contradict our family's truth? Second, there's a bulletin board in my daughter's high school promoting the 1619 Project, an error-filled proclamation that America's revolution was designed to protect slavery, therefore condemning our country as being systematically racist. Do you all agree with this? Third, your board-endorsed professional development speaker, Dr. Jeffries, promotes CRT, 1619, and BLM, and has taunted and blocked Ohio families on Twitter who have spoken up against school districts paying for his services. Fourth, some teachers are abandoning all classic literature, important for AP and state testing, and instead only teaching rigor-lacking, I think, young adult literature filled with racially charged narratives. Finally, teachers in various buildings are wearing Black Lives Matter t-shirts, passing out BLM coloring pages, and promoting a movement that has criticized the nuclear family, endorsed violent and destructive protests, and promoted socialism over capitalism. Through all of this, there has never been any communication with parents about the injection of these materials into our children's lives, nor has there been any balance of ideas. My family and I believe that Black Lives Matter. We believe that more work needs to be done to build understanding and appreciation of Asian and Latino cultures. We believe in cognitive dissonance and strong democratic debates. And just because we do not endorse CRT does not mean that we are denying that racism exists, that we are having a moment of white fragility, or that we have internalized our bias. We do not want to send our teens to schools to be indoctrinated, bullied, or coerced into assignments that are rooted in radical politics, which is exactly what is occurring in some of our classrooms. Too many parents in this district are being silenced because they fear retribution. We will not stand by and be patronized by those promoting equity and inclusion while denying equality and the U.S. Constitution.
1 minute.
We urge OLSD leadership to acknowledge this issue, consider parental concerns, and rethink its equity platform. We're asking you to turn down federal dollars that require equity and inclusion instruction. We're at a crossroads, and we need assurance that you will rethink your One Olentangy platform. Otherwise, you will be disenfranchising the people you serve and dividing the district you say that you want to unite. We are asking you, as parents and taxpayers, to listen to us. Please listen. Next, Karina Turner, 265 Terra Glen Drive, Delaware, Ohio. Dear board members, I want to publicly thank our amazing principal, Mr. Spinner at Berlin High School. As you know, we had an unfortunate incident where our beautiful building was treated as a sounding board for discontent. Mr. Spinner and our amazing head custodian, Dewey, and others unknown but appreciated, quickly removed the graffiti, rallied the kids for a double Blue Monday, and hung a large banner echoing our Berlin culture that Berlin pride is forever. I am grateful daily that my daughter gets to attend a high school where the principal and staff truly care about our children. Claws up. I also wanted to let you know of a forum that was hosted by the Berlin Student Association for Cultural Awareness. This was an event where the group invited African American police officers and a firefighter from Delaware and Columbus, as well as our Berlin resource officer, Deputy Scott Gaines. They met with students and had hard conversations. I was so impressed and proud of the advisor, Tanisha Murphy, and the students and law enforcement for doing this. I was not there in person, but was able to view the recording. I wanted to bring these moments to your attention so they get the applause they deserve and the district families can hear about the positive things happening in our district. Thank you, Karina Turner. Next, Margot Seabolt, 6922 St. Ninian's Street, Lewis Center. It is unfortunate that someone else is reading this public comment for me because the school board and the superintendent chose to keep the Board of Education meetings closed to in-person attendance. A large number of people are asking why these meetings are still closed to in-person attendance. Likewise, a large number of people in this district are asking why an in-person graduation was denied to our Olentangy students. In fact, over 1,110 people signed a petition asking for an in-person graduation. In other words, over 1,110 people do not want a pandemic-style graduation. Many of those signatures are those of actual seniors who are patriots, braves, pioneers, and bears. I'm Margot Seabolt. I have lived in this school district for almost 18 years. I've been an active participant in my children's education since my oldest son attended preschool in OLSD, beginning at age 3.5. That's almost 15 years of spending countless hours in classrooms, reading books, being a room mom, volunteering at parties, attending performances, helping with show choir, chaperoning school outings, organizing super games, fundraising, and attending sporting events at schools around the district. While I only pay $48 more in taxes per year than the Board of Education President Julie Wagner Fiesel, who no longer has students in this district, I believe every parent in this district pays enough taxes to expect the members of the school board to remember they are elected to be public servants, which means they are to represent the voices of district citizens. They're elected to respect us and not mock us. They're elected to put themselves in the shoes of parents and students and think about the impact the decisions the superintendent and staff make in regards to education, budgeting, extracurriculars, and to live up to the inclusive culture you promote to our students and community members. Through advocating for an in-person graduation for my son and every other student, I discovered the school board and superintendent had no other intention but to treat this year's graduation as another pandemic-style event. Interestingly enough, every other school district in over a 30-mile radius is managing to offer a real-life, in-person graduation. Marysville schools are allowing 6 guests per graduate. DeSales High School in Franklin County is allowing 10 guests per graduate. Next, Justin DeBoard, 217 Weatherburn Drive, Powell, Ohio. As I prepare for my son's graduation this weekend, I cannot miss the opportunity to express how disappointed I am with Superintendent Rafe, all the principals, and the school board in not holding a traditional graduation. You can point fingers at each other all day long like Keystone Cops, but you made the decisions that we are having to adjust to. You made it for reasons that we still don't fully understand. OSU offered the 22nd to go along with the 23rd. The money was never really as much as you told the public, and even now your communications director went on ABC6 and did not tell the truth when she said audio and visual expenses were extra. You have embarrassed the district and you should be ashamed of yourselves. We are not the only Central Ohio district that is not having a traditional, we are now the only Central Ohio district that is not having a traditional graduation and held a Bush League formal with no dancing. We're supposed to be leaders in the Ohio educational system for excellence, results-driven outcomes, and vast course offerings. All we lead in now is being the laughingstock of Columbus and a merry band of amateurs. What a shame and laughingstock you have all become. Our children deserve better, and you do as you want, regardless of how it impacts the very people you are supposed to serve. Next, Lori Moore, 990 Dale Ford Road, Delaware. Superintendent Rafe and members of the Olentangy Local School District School Board. I am writing you to express my concern about what is being taught in our schools and what professional development the employees of the district have been required to do. I have been a resident of the district since 1997.
2 minutes left overall.
We moved to OLSD because of the academic excellence the district promised. Unfortunately, the focus of the district has changed since 2010. I want to share my personal experience with you. I was a teacher at a prominent private school for 24 years. I resigned in October. I felt terrible leaving my students at the beginning of an unprecedented academic year, but for my own sanity, I needed to do it. The school was forcing critical race theory on the faculty. I got to a point where I was questioning my own belief system. How could I be an effective teacher when I could not make sense of the information and activities that I was forced to participate in? I was made to believe that I was given privilege because of the color of my skin. I needed to apologize for it. I had to read writings from Ibram Kendi and watch Oprah Winfrey documentaries. There were facilitators that demanded our participation. We were told we would feel uncomfortable, and that was fine. I was way more than uncomfortable. It shook me to my core and affected every aspect of my life.
1 minute.
I went down a rabbit hole that I'm just starting to come out of thanks to the special needs students I now work with one-on-one. Fundamentally, I could not make sense of it. My grandparents were immigrants. They came to America in a boat with the clothes on their back and change in their pockets. They entered the USA the legal way and had to teach themselves English. Nothing was given to them. They worked for everything they had. My grandmother worked in a factory until she was 88 years old. My parents grew up poor. The only Christmas gift they received was from the charity Newsies. They, along with my grandparents, taught us to work hard and be kind to others. This is the key to life. They also taught us moral courage to stand up for our beliefs. The last straw for me was when my employer sent out an email with a link to defund the police. This was sent in June at the height of the riots. My husband, a police officer, was in the middle of the riots. We felt like we were on an island. Critical race theory, equity, social justice, diversity and inclusion, and culturally responsive teaching are all ways to push the agenda of separating and dividing people based on the color of their skin.
That's time.
Were you finished with that one?
No.
Go ahead and finish that one. Do you agree to finish that email,
That's fine.
Kevin? Go.
Finish this one.
Yeah.
One of the 4 dispositions of the OLSD is kind. Learners bring out the best in others, quote, end quote. They respect different points of view and demonstrate empathy for people both inside and outside of their community. Students are encouraged to explore diverse perspectives, become increasingly open-minded, solve problems alongside people who are different than themselves, and make decisions that benefit society of a whole. This, along with purposeful, resilient, and curious, are the portrait of an Olentangy learner. How is this possible when the district pays a speaker to address the faculty and staff to judge people by the color of their skin? Apologize for it and say they will do better. This is exactly what sent me down a rabbit hole. If I cannot make sense of it as an adult, how are children going to make sense of it? Please take the time to examine the curriculum and what agenda you are pushing. The hearts and minds of our children and grandchildren depend on it. Get back to academic excellence.
Thank you. Next on our agenda, we have our discussion items. Dr. Fetty, you have some student fees to discuss with us.
We ask the board to approve our fee schedule. The fee schedule that you have in your exhibit is virtually unchanged from the current year's schedule. The only changes you see are to accommodate for new course titles or new courses, I believe. Do you have any questions about those?
No, I was surprised at how few there actually were.
Thank you very much.
Next, Emily Hatfield with the second reading of the 5-year forecast.
Hello again. So we are back. Let me take that off so I don't sound like I'm in a drive-through. I apologize. This is a really heavy mask. Back to discuss the 5-year forecast. The previous presentation was done at the end of April. That went through most of the details of the 5-year forecast, and we had our large discussion about those items. Before you, I just wanted to bring back the purpose, objectives, and methodology that we use for the 5-year forecast. I won't read through that again, but it is available for those who would like to understand more about how we compile the 5-year forecast. To recap, this is what we are looking at for the spring of 2021, the results of the 5-year forecast. We have had improved revenue, largely due to some of the state catch-up or returning of funds to the FY19 levels.
We also had our 2020 property valuations are now being collected, which also brought forward a timing increase that came from our TIF revenues, as we now had a full collection on a TIF area in the Polaris region. So that came on giving us higher revenue. Our expenditures were under budget in a couple of categories. We didn't spend all that we had anticipated through the pandemic use of additional substitute teachers and some of our field trips. So that helped reduce not only staffing, but also fuel and other consumption of materials. So with that, we are ending the 5-year forecast with an estimated days cash on hand at 65 days. Our informal cash policy is to have 2 to 3 months cash on hand at the end of a fiscal year. That's when we start earmarking and looking at our next levy opportunity. As it stands with this 5-year forecast and looking at the information we have before us, we will definitely meet our 3-year campaign promise from the 2020 levy campaign and exceed that by at least a year, possibly 2. We also have our risk assessment that is important to this forecast to discuss and talk about items that might cause that outcome to change. One of the components that we've discussed several times is the current enrollment and what's driving that enrollment growth and actually slowing it down. So our preschool and kindergarten enrollment was lower than anticipated for this academic year. It's really uncertain as to how the economic suppression and overall pandemic will keep that suppressed. We don't know if those students will return this coming calendar or academic year or the year after, but we will continue to watch that through actual enrollment for the fall, as well as an updated enrollment projection in the fall. Real estate valuations present a risk as we talk about overall economics. We talk about the economy for our commercial properties in the area, and also Board of Revision cases. The law changed as to the components and timing of when our commercial properties can challenge their valuations. So we are anticipating some more change in this regard than we've seen in previous years. As we've discussed before, the state funding and legislative changes continue to come pretty rapidly and with uncertainty from the Senate component. So we will continue our advocacy for fair school funding plan and additional funding for the district by the state to help balance the local support and the state support of the education of our students. We do have 4 associations within the community. These 4 associations, as in previous meetings, have come forward and we have worked with a 1-year extension or rollover. And then our 4th union has settled. And so we do have stability in the next year, knowing what those salary and benefit changes may cost us. But going forward after that time, it creates an area of risk for us as we negotiate and complete those contracts after the next academic year. Our ESCCO contracted services are an item that we usually bring forward because it is a large component of our other expenditures. Of course, that is the contracted services that we use for our preschool programming. It is our preschool teachers, some administrators, and also the OTs, PTs, and psychologists that treat or service, excuse me, not treat, but service our preschool students and students across the district. So with that, I will take your questions regarding the 5-year forecast. Any questions?
This is kind of related to the forecast, but we also are approving the budget,
Yes.
the 1-year budget, which is over $280 million.
Mhm.
So can you just briefly tell people how you take the individual budgets to roll them into this budget based
absolutely.
on your based on the 5-year forecast?
Absolutely, thank you for that question. So we have actually started the budgeting process in late January. We send templates to each building and department supervisor and or administrator of that area and ask them to complete their budgets, let us know what their needs are, what their projects might be for the following academic year. And then we take that information and compile it to create the budget that you see in the items that are labeled 400 to 800. For salary and benefits, we use the information that we have through our negotiated agreements, the approval of salaries that we have through those items. Those create the personnel costs. We also take a look at our enrollment projections and understand how many new students are coming and how many new teachers we will need to onboard to help service those students. Those also add to that personnel service line of the 5-year forecast. Benefits are associated with those personnel, so not just general operating increases from raises and such, but it's also additional services. We have also coming on board a new elementary school. Of course, we've discussed Shale Meadows will be online, so that's new staffing is included. We have middle school 6 scheduled for fiscal year 24, and then potentially elementary 17 in fiscal year 25. So all of that new staffing brings in new costs to the personnel line as well. And then the associated benefit costs for retirement, which are paid by state statute, and then traditional health insurance. So those costs are estimated to create the 100s and the 200 object codes that you see on the budget items. And then 400s, 500s, and 800s create the purchase services, supplies and materials, and other expenditures that you see within the 5-year forecast. So each group or code of 100, 200, et cetera, lines up with the actual expenditure line item of the forecast.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't have anything else.
I hope that made
Mhm.
sense. That's a
Yeah.
lot of data to roll up and condense down to 4 lines.
Thank you.
Is there more information I can give you?
Mm-mm.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. We'll let you get back to your seat because you're up again.
Moving and shaking tonight.
Okay. Okay, are you ready? Okay,
Yes,
you want to
thank you.
present your treasure action items, please?
Yes, please.
I would like to present treasure action items A through G for approval, please.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion on those? It includes the financials, the appropriations, the minutes of our past board meetings, donations, the 5-year forecast, and our general budget. Okay, call the roll, please.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Dr. Weiss,
Yes.
and Mrs. Wagner-Fiesel.
Yes.
Thank you.
Superintendent action items, what do you have for us tonight, Mr. Reed?
Yes, ma'am, I'd like to present superintendent action items A through O for approval.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Oh, she moved, so.
Oh, sorry, second.
Any further discussion on those? Okay. Can you please call the roll?
Dr. Weiss,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
and Mrs. Wagner-Fiesel.
Yes.
Thank you.
And now we have our Chief Operations Officer coming up to present the loan action item under this.
Good evening. I'd like to present Chief Operations Officer Action Item 13A1 for approval, Building Leadership Team Supplemental for Catherine Rafe.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on that? Okay. Call the roll, please.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Dr. Weiss,
Yes.
and Mrs. Wagner-Fiesel.
Yes.
Thank you.
So the last time we'll have to do that because you're her coaching career has come to an
Come
end.
to an end.
Not coaching anyone over cross country?
After about 16 years, she's coached 2 sports. She always had to.
I'd like to wish all of our graduates good luck as they graduate this weekend. Be safe.